Being awarded the degree of Doctor of Philosophy in recognition of a thesis entitled Factors Affecting the Evolution of Mimicry, Matthew Wheelwright.
Dressed for the occasion. I feel like I'm halfway through a story. So, we'll go back to the beginning. We'll start right at the very beginning because, as you can probably tell by the show, I am built different because I'm a test tube baby. I know! Hard to imagine, isn't it? All of this was once intentional. I mean, if anything, it goes to show we're not all designer babies. Some of us are very much described as knockoffs. But you know, I do worry about bringing up infertility on stage. You know, being IVF is very serious as a topic, and you know, people may be considering IVF adoption, and then they'll see me as a possible outcome, and think maybe we should just adopt. But you know, I do feel better about it recently because of that Netflix film Joy. Is anyone not familiar with Joy? Yeah. That's a shame because it really is the best emotion. If you've not seen it, it's a story about the trials and tribulations associated with trying to fertilise an egg outside a woman. I don't want to spoil it for you, but it works. And here we are. But I also worry, because you know, being grown in a lab sounds very sci-fi, very cool, but all it really means is that my conception is relatively sexist and a little bit messy, which is how I've lived my life since then, so it's not actually going to go on. But I think the biggest downside to being a test tube baby is the religious opposition to my very existence. That's not a joke, that's a hate crime. Oh no. The thing is, like, the Catholic Church believes that the ability to have children without sex is wrong, which I find an interesting take given Jesus. Do you know what I mean? Like, Mary and Joseph do it, it's the Messiah. Anyone else does it, it's against natural law. I don't think that's fair. Now, obviously I'm not comparing myself to Jesus, because that would be ridiculous. But, you know, there are very obvious similarities. You know, there's the fact that I was basically born via virgin birth, and my dad used to be a joiner, which is basically a carpenter. Yep. I'm not really the Messiah, just more of a mess. But what really annoys me much more than that is the fact that other species created via IVF have much better press than we do. Like at the start of this year, there was a cow who was produced by IVF, and she was hailed as the saviour of mankind because basically she was bred to produce much less methane, much less global warming, and therefore really, really good. If you want to Google it, it's true. Her name is Hilda. Short for who the hell does she think she is? I'm sorry, I shouldn't. I don't want to start beef with the bovine community. I mean, you know, there's a lot of hate in the world already, and I don't want to be seen as making it worse by acting like a catalyst. But the thing is, though, I think that, you know, I need to drink of water, that's what I think. There are a lot of anxieties associated with being a test tube baby, as I say. One of the biggest ones for me is aging. Like, not in the way that most people think. Like, the thing about aging as a test tube baby is that I have to remember that, the first test tube baby was born in 1978. I was born about 16 years later, in 1994, which sounds like a long time technologically speaking, but given that's now 31 years ago, really doesn't feel like enough. I don't, loads of people my age worry about being a beta male. I worry about being a beta test. I just don't want to go to the doctors one day for them to look at my results and just be like, test tube baby. Born before 1998? Yeah, I can tell we fixed that in the 20th anniversary release. I'd use this set to tell you some facts about test tube babies. All up for that? Excellent. First one is, despite the name, we're not actually grown in tubes. I do realise I'm not the best person to tell you this. I am fully aware that I look like I stayed in mine just a bit too long. I think maybe a better person to tell you that would be my twin sister, because she's more of a petri dish sort of shit. I'll be honest with you, Newcastle, she really doesn't like that one. Second fact is, we're actually really controversial. Until 2012, IVF was illegal in Costa Rica. Now, to put that in context, all drugs were legalised there for personalised use about 30 years earlier. So for a time, I was in fact harder than heroin. But please don't test it out because I'm very fragile. Third fact is, a study came out in 2013 that suggests that people conceived by IVF have higher levels of early adulthood clinical depression than people conceived naturally. Never said they were fun facts. But the reason I bring this up is, the scientists who carried out the study, they didn't understand what the link between the two things was, but I think it's very obvious. You see, as a test tube baby, I have to constantly worry about whether or not I'm a disappointment, with the full knowledge that I cost about the same as a second-hand hatchback. Like a Vauxhall Astra who feels immense guilt every time the check engine light comes on. So it's not ideal. I do wonder, like, would I worry about this less if I got to work for my dad, because then at least I'd be tax deductible? Could ring up the HMRC and be like, it wasn't just a fertility treatment, it was a recruitment scheme, but not sure if that would work. Still, you know, at least he got me as part of a 2-for-1 deal, which is good because my parents are from Yorkshire, so they would be furious if they missed out on a chance for a bargain. Actually, do you know what? Over the years, I've developed a theory about Yorkshire people. I believe we all have perfect pitch, but we'll never tell you directly because that is just the mark of a tremendous bell end. So instead, what we do is we give you the tone of our non-verbal reactions, which is why when someone from Yorkshire laughs, we go, ha 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 ha, E. But you know, my parents decided to get me as early adopters. Like, as I say, I was only 16 years into the technology when they decided to get me and my sister. And I think that was really nice, but I guess they must have ordered us on express delivery as well, because we arrived 6 weeks early. So we had to spend the first 6 weeks of our life in a neonatal incubator. I don't know if you know much about neonatal incubators, but the history is quite interesting. They first became used for people when a Parisian doctor seen them being used as chickens, like on chickens. I mean, they had to make some changes, like they had to get rid of like the rotating metal skewers. They had to go. But I don't just have a twin sister, I have two siblings. I have a twin sister, one half brother and one half sister. So 3 if you round up. And those are just the ones I know about, because at Christmas, I found out that basically my mum, when she got the spare eggs from her IVF, she donated them and allowed other couples to use them. So there is a non-zero chance that I have siblings out there that I do not know, which is a bit of a mindfuck, I'll be honest with you. You know, it does worry me in some ways because, you know, there is the chance that I missed out on like familial bonds with these people, and you know, I might not have like got in contact with them during my childhood. But you know, at the end of the day, we'd still be family. And should anything happen to me, spare organs. If anything, like it means I can live my life a little bit more hedonistically. Like, I'm not saying I was holding back, but on the first day of freshers, right, I went out and I was like, right, I'm gonna take it easy. I'm gonna have half a pint of lemonade. Pace myself. Second night of freshers, I was like, no, this is ridiculous. Can't be doing this. You know, this is the one time in my life I'm gonna let loose and just party. So I stayed in and watched Minecraft streamers. But now that I've got spare organs, it's fine. I can like push the boat out. I can try loads of stuff like Coke. Full fat, obviously, you know, not messing around with the diet stuff. Or, you know, crystal meth. Not too much though, just like a soupçon. I'll be honest, I don't know much about the nomenclature of that. But you know, you might be wondering, how do you know the drinks that you had on a night 13 years ago? Well, I wasn't too hungover to remember. I was fine. But I was so worried about going into my overdraft during the first year of university that I kept track of every single purchase I made during that year. Like, if I got train tickets home, that would go on the list. If I bought a drink from the union, also on the list. 37p into the charity box, that would go on the list. And then I claimed back it on the tax deductions. I missed that once, not doing it again. And as they say, every little helps. One of the other things that having unknown siblings affects, is dating. You want to have things in common with the people that you're seeing. A mother might be a step too far. But I've not. I mean, this year has been actually, since finding out about it, has actually been quite promiscuous for me. I've had 2/3 of my relationships I've ever had during this year. Yeah, I did the maths. Out of the 3, 2 of this year. I don't want you to think that I'm keeping count. I'm not one of those people who's trying to get as many people as possible. But I do have a spreadsheet. But genuinely, every person I've ever dated has had a very important impact on my life. My most recent ex used to tell me that they found me as sexually attractive as Liam Hemsworth. Yeah. It's good, but it's not Chris. And to be fair, it was not all because neither of us really do it for her because she's asexual. But I'll take being hot on a technicality. That's not bad for a man who looks like someone trying to draw Stephen Merchant from memory. She also used to tell me that I gave off strong bisexual vibes. No idea where she got that idea from, but I reckon she was talking to my other ex. Not sure what he told her, but must have been convincing. No, I think if anything, I want to date as few people as possible. I think the third time might be the charm for me. I adore my partner, but also I found out recently that my parents got me and my sister on their 5th attempt of IVF, which is the same amount of times it took Lou Bega to find a mambo he really liked. And I don't think realistically I'm ever going to reach the UK top 40, even with perfect pitch. But I also outside of that, dating was a struggle for me. I went on some horrendous dates. The worst one, I took a girl to York, and the first place we went to was the Shambles, which was very prescient because the whole thing was a disaster. Because basically, when we got there, the first thing that she did was buy a sword. And that had questions raised. What sort of vibe am I giving off that people think they have to buy a weapon within minutes of meeting me? But then I remembered, on my dating profile, I mentioned that I like a bit of roleplay. And she took one look at me and assumed that meant live action. So, the moral of the story is always be specific. But I think if I do end up only ever being in a relationship with 3 people, that'd be really nice because then I will be less than 5 and I will have 1. I think where I got my competitive nature from was when me and my sister were born, we got signed up to a developmental study called TEDS, which is the Twins Early Development Study. And what that was, all twins born between 1994 and 1996 had a chance to be signed up for this study, where they looked at your progress through life in different aspects of learning and even relationships with people and how you navigate the world in general. And what I found really interesting, that it was shown to be the world's leading cause of sibling rivalry. I'll be honest, my sister got off to a better start than I did, because when I started to walk, I could only go sideways, left to right. Like a crab or a space invader. Whereas she, full mobility in all directions. To go back to the video game example, she was sort of I was in a 2D side scroller, she was in a 3D sandbox. It was, there were problems. So it really was no surprise to me when my parents found out that I was built different. I have a condition called dyspraxia, For those who aren't aware, dyspraxia is something that affects things like my hand-eye coordination, my spatial awareness, and my ability to pick people out from crowds. Have we got any dyspraxics here today? Yeah? I couldn't give you a high five, but we both know that'd end in carnage. But, it was because I was diagnosed so young, my parents got given a little booklet where they could have all of the problems that I'm likely to face and things to do with it. It's a real thing. There it is. It explained, when I found this, it explained a lot of things about my childhood. Obviously they tried some of these things. One of the things they tried was a way to improve my ability to pick people out of crowds. And the suggestion in the book was, put your child's grandma in the crowd and have them pick them out. Which I could do it instantly, especially if it was in a group of other people's nans. Because you imagine someone's nana and there's this sweet little old lady, but mine had been cremated. We only ever did it the once, at the request of the council, because there was the incident with the road sweeper, and it's fine. She was a neat freak. It's what she would have wanted. But, there were some other exercises in there as well, more physical exercises. I brought this booklet. I had to prove it to you that this is an actual booklet, because say what you want about the efficiency of the NHS spending. They really didn't spend a lot on the diagrams in this book. There's one. Genuine piece of medical documentation. This first one, in a half-kneeling position, practice reaching to touch someone's hand at each side and above the head. Obviously for the playground game, high five to the side. Would never... I mean, it did nothing for the down below, but alas, I was always going to be too slow. That was the problem there. There's another one here. Compromising position. But the description was interesting. So on all fours, bend the arms at the elbows and just touch the floor with the nose. A little flour on some paper, just to get a little bit on the end of the nose, encourages this. At some point, a paediatrician must have looked at that and thought, well, we can't use real cocaine. So I guess the placebo will have to do. The third one, arguably the most wild. There we go. What do you do with your medically uncoordinated child? Pick them up by the ankles. It's just the way it goes. So, wheelbarrows. Walking on the hands with both feet lifted, keep the hands pointed directly in front and don't let the hips sway. If the child has great difficulty with this, you can hold the legs further up and then move them down as the child becomes steadier. I don't think holding those is a good idea. I don't know what the logic is here. It's like, yes, the fear will guide you through. And if it doesn't work, the flesh was weak. If anything, it's just natural selection, which, given the nature of my conception, I kind of avoided till that point. So, Darwin had to come a knocking one day, and there he is. But yeah, I think dyspraxia is quite an overlooked condition. In 2014, the Paralympics Association decided that we weren't allowed to compete in the games anymore. Now, if that has happened to anyone else, it would be like marches in the street, but we're really bad at coordination. I'm not trying to kick up a fuss, I don't want too much. Maybe our own sport, not javelin. I'm not a maniac. Maybe something like diving, because every fall as a dyspraxic is spectacular. But, I think a disability which gets a lot more attention, ironically, is ADHD. I think it needs a rebrand, though. I'm going to come out and say it. French name, better. If you don't know what that is, it's trouble déficit de l'attention avec usance hyperactivité. Now, I understand that's quite a mouthful. However, it is shortened to TDAH, and I think that just fits the vibe better because, person going through the house trying to find their car keys, opens up the fridge, ta-da! Although, to be fair, I might be biased because I did go to France earlier this year. While I was there, learned 2 new words, cravache and gorge profonde. If you don't know what that means, it means whip and deep throat. I'm not going to delve into the itinerary, but needless to say, I had a wonderful time. And when I got back, very busy, session on the old spreadsheets. But I do relate to ADHD people quite a lot, because one of the other things that dyspraxia affects is my memory. Like, my long-term memory's fine, but my short-term, just forget about it. And where I find that affects me most is when I'm going through airports. Like, I'm constantly at a check, I've got my boarding pass, passport, suitcase, and what I tend to find is if the security team see you patting yourself down, they are quite keen to join in. Which is why, if I ever did win the lottery, I'd never use the money to travel the world, because all those cavity searches leave me with an anus like a wine glass, just terrible for me. But can you imagine the person who has to search you on the way home? Just, could you bend over, please, sir? I see you've done this before. But another place where it becomes really obvious that I have dyspraxia is when I'm on the dance floor. Like, every time I go out for a boogie, it's like that old Sophie Ellis Bextor song, Crying in the Discotheque. I tried salsa once while I was at university, and you might be thinking, why would someone who has a known disability try salsa? Crushing loneliness. I'm fine. But what I found was that, staying inside and playing Minecraft all day, not really conducive for starting relationships. In fact, I think Minecraft has probably prevented so many relationships, they should add a new resource, the cock block. But while I was doing it, obviously it went kind of wrong. I got my arms tangled on my own face. You may be wondering how I did that. I have a second condition, it's called hypermobility. There's my qualification, there you go. What does that mean? It means this. Thank you very much. Obviously, when people saw that, it doesn't spur romantic feelings at all. But the good thing is, once I got home, I could provide myself some comfort. Right, not like that. All my ribs are in the correct place. To be fair, maybe with practice, at a stretch, I could give myself a reach around. But I'm actually really fortunate because my current partner is really into kinky stuff. The more curious among you might be like, well, are you the sub or the dom? I'm the rope. That's all gone well. Now, sometimes I wonder, could this have been avoided if my parents had waited a while? Because, there have been advances in IVF recently. It's gone obscene. The other month, there was the first ever embryo to be conceived without any human intervention. What they did was, they taught nanobots using AI to spot the healthiest looking sperm, and then they gave them lasers to shoot the tails off them to make them easier to handle. Now, the science fiction fans amongst you will sort of recognise that as a mistake. I'm not worrying about an AI uprising, but if there is a Skynet-style situation at hand, I don't want to be dealing with an army of sperminators. But it's not just IVF where the technology's gone wild. I saw adverts the other day for a 4D spectroscopy, ultrasound. I don't know how that works. I'm just imagining they put the mother in a chair, one of those ones you get at the cinema, and it's oh, girl. And then there's a jet of warm liquid, and it's like, oh no, that's fine, that's just amniotic fluid. But even modern test tube babies have to worry about like the pressures of life. Like, there was a therapist who came out and said that sometimes parents have to remember that they're building like a person instead of a piece of furniture, which is a bleak statement to have to make. However, I think it was John Lewis who said, one man's trauma is another man's ad campaign. So here's my pitch. I think IKEA could go with IKEA, because your flat pack won't chat back. I really do understand like where the pressure comes from. My parents, like I said, had to try IVF 5 times. And it's not just like the financial aspect of that, because IVF is expensive, but they had to go to a clinic, and 4 times over, a doctor had to look them in the eye and be like, I'm so sorry, it hasn't happened this time. And they kept going back, and every time they went back, where the clinic was located was right next to the abortion clinic. So they were having this problem where they couldn't get a child, and people had an abundance of children. But every single time they had to go through that. And so now every day I have to think about the stuff that they went through in order to get me, and then try and make sure that I live up to that in some way. And I came out and I didn't have what would be considered a normal working brain. But then I got to school and I sort of found that I was academically really successful. And so that cheered me up quite a lot. Like, I've got a report here for when I was 9 years old. There it is, look at that. Really good results. General progress, Matthew has continued to maintain the high standards he has set in the academic areas of the curriculum. He's intelligent and has a good general knowledge. As the year has progressed, he has shown a desire to make sure he gets the tasks he has to do done by sitting by himself and giving them his full attention. His behaviour is always very good, both in the classroom and around the school. Good year, well done. But obviously they had to give some sort of feedback. That was mine. Areas for improvement next year, the presentation of his work, and to continue to work hard to improve his coordination skills. Just circle that for you there. I really tried. But you can see that is just dyspraxia. That is what I've been told to improve. It's like getting sparkling water and being like, well, it's too fizzy. It's always going to be like that. Like, another thing that dyspraxics struggle with, self-esteem. With things that they may have heard, or in some cases, be written down for them in a textbook. But I think, if anything, I probably had a bit too much self-esteem. I don't want to say I was a troublesome kid, but I really did put the prick into, forgot about this, sorry. One of the things that I was really shown is that I had the potential to be a really good scientist, which I really liked, because, having been created via, a new stage of medical development, I thought it'd be nice to go full circle and go back into science to further that a little bit more. But as I said, I was a little prick. I put the prick into precocious little prick. That's what I did. And you might be thinking, well, a lot of children aren't the nicest of people. That's just how they are. They haven't learned all the sort of social interactions that adults have and social standing. I once lost at Pass the Bomb, which is a board game, and I called childlike. Or I threatened to. I didn't go through with it, but my mum, she was well on board. She packed the suitcase for me. She was like, go ahead, do it. I do wonder, I might still have been under warranty at that point. Was she hoping to trade me in for a nicer model? Someone who's less likely to outbursts. But I think part of that, as I say, was due to the fact that I excelled quite a lot at school. I couldn't abide by the thought of losing, and therefore I had to win all the time. And the reason for this was several things that happened during school. I became a published poet. Yeah. Well, to be fair, I say that as if it's a thing everyone in my year did at the same time. That's not much of a flex. But their poems were stuff like, Stick Chaser, Bone Chewer, Slipper Slobberer. derivative. If I'm being brutally honest, it doesn't even rhyme. There's no exploration of the deeper meanings of what it means to be human. It's just basic. I chose a slightly different topic. I decided to talk about Lindisfarne. Now, had I gone there for like a nice school trip or maybe a family holiday and had like an ice cream and decided to write about that, I'll let you decide, because I'm going to read out my poem. Lightning flashed in the dark sky and thunder rolled along the pebble-dotted shore. Suddenly, out of the fog emerged a fleet of dragon-headed longships. The monks ran out of the monastery at Lindisfarne, only to find 70 of Viking warriors. A horn sounded, the Danes charged, destroying everything in their path and plundering the riches from the learning place. After this attack, the sands were red with blood and littered with the corpses of monks. I was 11 when I wrote that. Tonally, you can see the differences, but there is much more in there in terms of theming. I was a happy child, I promise. But if you're not familiar with what this is about, basically in 793, that would be weird. Vikings in the 18th century, it's like, where have you been? So I got lost. Went to America, came back. Took longer than we thought. But in 793, there was a group of Vikings decided that were fed up with monotheism. I guess they'd seen their sort of hypocrisy towards medical innovations and thought, none of that. And so they decided to ransack the entire island. I will say mine took less creative liberties than the poems from the time. There was like accounts of there being like lightning flashing and whirlwinds brewing and then fiery dragons across the sky. As a side note, bread at that time was often infected with a thing called ergot fungus, which is a constituent part of LSD. just an unrelated historical fact. But Vikings actually played like a really big role in my educational development. Like in class 6, which is just after that, we had a task where we had to make long ships. Not like actual size ones, like little cardboard ones. I guess short ships. And this was over 2 days in class. I'd missed the first day because of illness, and then I had to come back in, being medically cack-handed and sort of catch up with everyone else. And I nailed it. But because I'm a little weasel, just most annoying little child, I went up to my teacher and thought, oh, it's not as good as it could have been. Like I could have done much better, even though I knew I was better than most. And primary school teachers, they have to be really caring and understanding and supportive of their children. And she just looked at me and said, I know that you don't need this. Give over. And it was at that point I realised that no matter how smart I was as a child, adults were still more intelligent, even like outside of roles like lawyers and doctors, even like a primary school teacher, much smarter than a child. I soon came to learn I do need to be a bit more humble. So continued through primary school, got to secondary school. I'd passed my 11 plus to get into a grammar school. And my parents sent me around. They were like, oh, go look around, make sure that you're getting on with the place. And when I came back, they were like, oh, how was it? And I was like, oh yeah, it's really, really nice. They have vending machines. They weren't thrilled with that answer, I'll be honest. To be fair, vending machines produce, they have a lot of overpriced and products which are often criticised as being inorganic, like me. There was bond there. I mean, I was also 11, so I could have just really liked sugar. But I don't know what they expected. Did they expect me to go into that place and be like, oh, mother, father, it was brilliant. I had a word with teacher and the EBAC scores were the best in the district. That's not what a child's going to say, especially since that didn't come into use until 5 years later. Although, to be fair, if I had been able to tell the future, that would have been really good, because that would give me a third thing in common with Jesus. And that's comedically much more satisfying. I mean, it wouldn't have worked though, because that school was an academy and therefore was non-profit. But while I was at school, although I was quite smart in the classroom, I did have some things that maybe my parents think I wasn't quite as smart as I've been painted during primary school. They came to pick me up one day, my mum did, and I'd walked into town a bit, and she was like, "Oh, where are you?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm by the traffic lights." She's like, "Which ones?" I'm like, "Oh, the one that's at green." Like, Hilda wouldn't have done that. Like, cows, red-green colourblind, first of all. And they can't use phones. And I'll be honest, that wasn't the only time I did it. Though the second time I stopped by a red light, so at least she could stop. And I did learn a lot at secondary school, not just not to base directions around the non-permanent features of landscape. I learned to be humble. Obviously, when I was in primary school, I was a big fish in a small pond, and then as I moved into the next level, I realised that I was in a much larger pond. I mean, you've seen the poetry. I don't want to be harsh, but you've seen the poetry that the people from primary school made. So I was in a much larger pond with bigger fish who at least understood iambic pentameter and subtext. So I learned to be humble, and so it was really a good experience for me, because I think I would have turned out a lot differently had that not happened. But I was still smart enough to go to university. The university I ended up going to was the University of Bristol. I love Bristol. It's a really nice, laid-back city. I'll give you stories to why I think this. While I was there was a rumour going around about a guy jacking up with a local girl, and while they were going at it, he was getting a bit too excited, and he how do I put this down? He had a rectal dysfunction. He zigged when he should have zagged. He stuck it up her arse. Yeah. But I find a lot of women in that situation going to what I like to call self-service checkout mode, like unexpected item in banging area. Remove this item before continuing. But to her credit, she just went, "Oh, changing lanes are we? Fair play." I mean, she really couldn't have been annoyed, because she'd seen how I danced, so. But the course I decided to go for was, when I was younger, I really wanted to be a zookeeper. That was what I wanted to be, part-time zookeeper, part-time astronaut. But I'd become more humble, and also universities don't offer astrozoology courses. I checked. So I really wanted to be a zookeeper. My whole childhood, I would just go through lists of I look through all my books, and I'd go on the internet and find lists of species that were not in my books. I keep a track of them. I'm like, "Oh, this is really cool. There's so many different species of animal." And then I'd think about the animals I'd like to keep in my zoo, and I was like, "Oh, I really want to have these animals in this exhibit. I think this would really go well together. And these ones are endangered, all that sort of thing." If it hadn't been obvious at that point that I was neurodivergent, there were signs. Lists are an integral part of my life. As you may have heard, there was, purchased during university, mentioned that earlier, species not in my books, and species I would keep in a zoo. This list, not exhaustive. There was a time that I decided that a really good business venture would be to sell fudge. I just woke up one day and I was like, fudge is where it's at. This is where it's at. Innovate a bit, vending machines, Going back, market research, what I did, it wasn't just sugar, it was genuine. I was thinking about it. You would have thought that maybe a list of the recipes, but no, just types. Just sat down one day and I was like, cherry's good. Like that. Tutti free? Sure. Yeah, and obviously, there's this list. That's my list of lists. But, you know, my parents wanted me to aim higher than like a fudge salesman or a zookeeper. They said that I shouldn't spend my life shoveling shit. So I went for zoology as a degree. Like that was, I decided if I go into research, that's really good. Now, because I went into a STEM-based subject, the people there were in a little bit of a sharp contrast to the rest of the city. I'll be honest. Like, while I was there, someone described being beaten in an exam by other members of the class as sickening. And another one was collecting volunteers for a study, and she said, and I quote, "This isn't a competition, but if it was, I'd be winning." More type A's than a blood bank, honestly. But then, like, I felt more akin to the people in the rest of the city, and so there was sort of a divide starting there. And then I went to Newcastle. I came here and I studied for my PhD, and I got it, and I was so happy. Like I put all this work in, and I got my first ever postdoc. And then while I was there, about a year in, I made a really important discovery. I'm not really good at science. I struggled hard. Like, I was just too clumsy. I was too uncoordinated. I couldn't get the data that I needed. Like, I was really falling behind. Like, I'd spent all this time trying to reach this place, and I'd done it, and then I got there, and I'd failed. Like, I tried so hard. Like, and it was the first time really that my disability felt like something that was holding me back. It wasn't just that I wasn't reaching perfection, it was actively preventing me from doing the thing that I wanted to do. Like, I've never really felt like that before. I hope I want to feel like that again. And like, to this day, like, I still feel like I was, every time I go into a Zoom meeting, I feel anxious, just from the meetings I had with my supervisor while I was there. I just knew that I was underperforming. And so once I reached the end of that contract, I just left academia. And the whole time, even though my teacher had said that I was really good at science, I was just good at remembering facts. That's all I'd ever really been good at. And I think deep down I knew that. But I am still a fan of facts. So to stroke my ego, does anyone mind if I recount some? Yeah. Excellent. So here is my favourite frog. There he is. He's called the Bornean flat-headed frog, because he's from Borneo and he's got a flat head. Or Barbarula kalimantanensis. Like, the good thing about being a doctor is I can say that. It's not pretentious, it's just what we do. But he's my favourite frog, because although he looks quite uninteresting, he's actually the world's only lungless frog. How cool is that? Yeah. I mean, like, the people who discovered that, they were stunned, obviously, because obviously there are some lungless amphibians, but the first time it had been ever seen in a frog, how does it even breathe? And it wasn't until about, I think it was 18 years later that they had the technology to be able to discover why. They carried out a micro CT scan on a specimen. And have we got any respiratory experts or herpetologists? It was a long shot. Yeah. So don't worry, I'll try and simplify this as much as I can. What they found was they have lungs. Yeah, it turned out in the initial dissection, the guy had missed them. And in the move of remarkable shithousery, there's a publication called New Scientist who does popular scientific takes of all the the latest science. They reached out to him for interview. But to be fair, he was quite magnanimous about it. Bickford, who you see, that's David Bickford, the first author. He said he's very happy science has learnt more about this rare and elusive species, which is lovely. Science is all about learning, and you have to be able to adapt to the new information, because that's how science works. He adds that these lugs are very, very tiny for the frog's size, and therefore he still thinks that it relies on oxygen taken in through skin. Basically, he's saying, I'm right. Which I find nice and reassuring for me, because at least I could admit when I was bad at science and leave with my head held high. The second fact I really like is it's come to the attention of the world recently that if you feed cows seaweed, it actually reduces the methane emissions from them by 85%, which is great for global warming. Like, imagine like how much methane is produced by cattle in the world. And if you just change it to a relatively common resource, it's really good. And it's got to the stage now where like there are actually trials in supermarkets that are actually trialing this. And I find it really good because not only can I buy beef that's good for the planet, but I can do it out of spite, because what that means is Hilda is now surplus to requirement. And so we can see how she feels. I really shouldn't have put a through line of bullying a cow. But my third fact, I mean, I'm a guy who looks like he knows a lot about NFTs. Because I do. But I like talking about the original NFT, and that's the Neotropical Fruit Trade. Yeah, there was a thing during like the 18th and 19th century called Pineapple Mania, where people just went doolally for a Del Monte. They would spend thousands on them just to say that they owned one. And, you know, it sounds stupid. It's not like they'd rent them out at great expense. But I think it's better than the current NFT because, you know, on the one hand you get a delicious fruit, and on the other you just get a picture of a really ugly monkey. So who's the real winner? But sometimes I wonder, like, I really like this period of history as well, because it's the only time that a Hawaiian pizza would be considered sophisticated. And I would look like an absolute baller back then. But you know, I do wonder, like, did they ever try and like find other uses for the pineapple? Did they ever think like, maybe we shouldn't just eat them? Did they ever think like, gold and silver, not enough, maybe wedding ring made of pineapple? Maybe not. You know, perhaps the symbol for eternal love shouldn't be so biodegradable. And also, you know, pineapple produces an enzyme called bromelain, and what that does, it dissolves like proteins, like the ones found in your skin. It gives you horrible dermatitis. So all you really could do is worry your partner. It's like, oh, is it sorbet? It's not even frozen. I mean, you could, you know, deep fry it. That would stop the enzyme, but you still got the ridiculous expense. But, you know, if they want to frit away their savings, more power to them. I mean, I genuinely do find it reassuring, because, like, if you like look at how much a pineapple cost back then and how much I cost, it's about the same. And I feel like I've achieved more than a decorative fruit. Although, to be honest, I can't say all of them, because, you know, this one is, you know, a bit of real estate in a prime location. So the return on investment on that, I really can't compete. You know, like, I still have this problem where I did fail out, like, and I had to find like a way of, you know, making a living after like being in academia, and I had to do that. I work in an escape room now. I really love it. I was really worried that, like, you know, I'd struggle to concentrate for the full hour, but, you know, I just found it really easy to like lock in. But, you know, it's still, I spent 7.5 years at university, and I ended up with a minimum wage job, something that my parents specifically said that I should aim higher than. And they still went through, like, my whole life they've been supporting me, and like, even before I was born, like, they were supporting me, and I've let them down. Like, now I'm sort of left with this sort of crushing worry, like, what are they going to think? Like I've just ended up back at square one. But then a couple of months ago, it was my birthday, and they got me a really nice card. and it says, "Just for you, son, on your birthday. You're a son who makes life special in so many wonderful ways. We're so proud of the amazing man you've grown up to be, and I hope you know how much you mean on your birthday and always. With love, from Mum and Dad." And it was at that point that I realised that all the pressure, all the anxiety, it all come from me. Like, it wasn't them. Like, I just put it upon myself, and I think that's not something that's like unique to me, or I don't think it's even unique to test tube babies. I think that's something that, you know, in this day and age with social media and everything like that, I think we all do it. Like, we all compare ourselves to other people, like their accomplishments, their achievements. And like, I realised that even though I'd basically just been born, like, I had been made to be someone's son. That's all I ever had to be. That's all I ever needed to be. And I think that's all everyone needs to be, is just be someone's family. That's it. And if you remember nothing else, just be, and don't worry about comparing yourself to other people or to preconceptions or anything like that. And do things even if you aren't good at that. So, if you'll allow me, I want to end this on a dance number. Cue the music, please. Thank you very much. You've been wonderful. Thanks so much for coming out and supporting us. And do go watch the rest of New Directions. It's all really funny, lovely people. Thank you very much.